My mother called me a liar from birth, all because of her belief in scientific parenting. From the day my twin sister Mina and I were born, she fastened honesty bracelets to our wrists. Lie, and it flashed red, triggering an electric shock from Mom's remote. Mina's bracelet always stayed green. Even when she tore Mom's dress and blamed the cat, it glowed gently. But me? If I whispered, "Mom, I'm hungry," it turned furious red and pain shot through my arm. At first, I argued. Mom said, "The machine doesn't lie. The pain will help you remember." After thousands of shocks, I believed it. I was born a liar. On New Year's Eve, as Mom prepared to take Mina to see fireworks, searing pain tore through my stomach. I collapsed, gasping, "Mom, my stomach. It hurt so much. Help me." But my bracelet flashed frantic red. Mom looked down at me, my hair wet with cold sweat, and turned the remote to its highest setting. "You'd fake being sick just to see the fireworks?" she said, disappointed. "You never learn." She walked out with Mina, the door slamming behind them. I thought, Mom must be right. The bracelet is red, so I can't really be in pain. I must be lying for attention. "I'm sorry, Mom. Next time I'll try to be honest." "It hurts?" My body convulsed with pain, my fingernails scratching white lines into the hardwood floor. The doorknob turned. A spark of hope ignited in my chest. Mom was back. She's a doctor. She must have realized something was wrong. She came back to save me. "Are you done with your tantrum? The fireworks are about to start, and Mina's getting impatient." "Mom," I whispered, my voice barely audible, stretching a trembling hand toward the door. "It really hurts. It feels like my insides are tearing apart." She glanced at the frantic red light on my wrist. She knelt, her fingers digging into my chin, forcing my head up. Her voice was laced with fury. "Audrey, when are you going to stop this act? You're pathologically incapable of telling the truth. You can stay in here and think about what you've done." Dad called from the entryway. "Honey, let's go, the show's starting. If Audrey doesn't want to come, she doesn't have to. Should we leave her some dinner?" Mom stood up, brushing her hands together as if she'd touched something filthy. "Leave her dinner? For what? There's a whole stash of junk food in her closet. She bought it with the money she stole last week. She won't starve." "Lock the door. She can come out when that bracelet turns green." "But..." Dad hesitated. "But what?" "Spare the rod. Spoil the child. Look at Mina. So honest, her bracelet is always green. Audrey is rotten to the core. She needs to be corrected." But my closet was empty. Mina was the one who took the money. Mina was the one who ate the snacks. She had just stood there, her bracelet glowing a soft, innocent green, and said, "It wasn't me." And Mom believed her. When I tried to say I didn't take it either, the red light flared, and the electricity came. I watched Mom turn to leave. Mina peeked through the crack in the door and made a face at me. "Bye-bye, Audrey. We're off to see the pretty fireworks." Her bracelet, a steady, verdant green. It was beautiful. Thump. The door slammed shut. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. The house fell silent. It was just me and the saw blade working its way through my gut. It hurt so much. But Mom was right. The machine doesn't lie. The bracelet is red, so I must be lying. I'm not in pain. I'm really truly not in pain. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to hypnotize myself. I don't know how long passed, but the pain actually seemed to fade. With the last ounce of my strength, I crawled toward my desk. I had to write an apology. That was the rule. Whenever the red light came on, I had to write, "I am a liar," 500 times. If I finished, maybe Mom would forgive me? Maybe she'd take me to the hospital? My hand shook as I opened the crumpled, worn-out notebook. It was already filled, page after page, with my previous apologies. Usually I wrote, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I won't lie anymore." But this time, I wanted to write the truth. My vision blurred. Crying, I used the last of my energy to scrawl, "Mom, I really do love you. It hurts so much. Why won't you just believe me? Please, Mom, just believe me this one time." As I finished the last word, the agony in my stomach suddenly vanished. In its place was a lightness I'd never felt before. My body felt weightless. I was floating. I looked down and saw myself slumped over the desk, one arm hanging limply in the air, motionless. The bracelet on my wrist was still flashing a frantic, desperate red. So I was dead. But I still hadn't learned how to be an honest girl. "I'm sorry, Mom." I was awakened by the sound of laughter. It was Mom, Dad, and Mina. The fireworks were beautiful tonight. Especially that one shaped like a smiley face. Just as cute as my Mina. Mom's voice held a tenderness I had never heard directed at me. I floated in midair, watching as the front door opened. Even as a spirit, my first instinct was to drift toward them, to help them with their slippers as I always did. It was a survival instinct, a deeply ingrained need to please. "Mom." I opened my arms, wanting to hug the woman who brought the winter chill in with her. "I'm not in pain anymore. I'll be good from now on. Please don't be mad." but my hands passed right through her body, like smoke. Mom shivered, frowning. Why is it so chilly in here? Is the heat off? I froze, staring at my translucent hands. Right. I was dead. The dead can't hug the living. We should probably check on Audrey, Dad mentioned casually. She didn't come out for dinner. I hope she's not too hungry. My dad. He still cared. I looked at Mom expectantly. If she found out I was dead, would she be sad? Would she feel any regret? Mom just scoffed, slipping on her house shoes and striding toward my room. Let her starve. It's what she deserves. That nasty habit of faking sickness for attention? It's because we've been too soft on her. She shoved my door open. She didn't turn on the light. In the dim glow from the living room, she could see me slumped over the desk, motionless, as if I were asleep. Well, look at you, Mom said, crossing her arms, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You think if you pretend to be pitiful, I'll carry you to bed? You're 10 years old, Audrey, not 5. I floated beside my own body, screaming silently. Mom, I'm not pretending. I'm dead. Just look at me. Touch me. My body is cold. But she couldn't hear me. She only believed what she could see. Mina squeezed past her, holding up her wrist triumphantly. Audrey is a lazybones. See, my bracelet is green, and hers is still red. She's even lying in her dreams. Mom stroked Mina's hair. That's because you're my good girl. Don't pay any attention to the liar. Let her sleep it off. She can stay there all night for all I care. Dad peeked in from behind her. Maybe we should put her to bed? It's cold tonight. Put her to bed? Mom snapped. Absolutely not. Kids today are spoiled rotten. The parenting experts say you have to use the cold shoulder method in these situations. She has to realize her own mistake. Look at that red light. It means her psychological state is still extremely defiant. She hasn't reflected on her actions at all. That's enough. Let's go to bed. We have to go to your grandma's tomorrow for New Year's Day. Mom turned on her heel, pulling the door closed behind her. Click. The lock engaged. I floated beside my corpse, watching that single point of crimson light in the darkness. The despair in my soul was colder than death itself. Mom, if you had just taken one more step, if you had just touched my hand, you would have known I was already cold. But you didn't. You only trust that cold machine, not the daughter you carried for 9 months. Late that night, a mouse scurried out from my empty closet. I used to be terrified of mice. I would scream every time I saw one. But now, I could only float at the ceiling, watching as it scurried brazenly across my corpse. Go away, I tried to say, but no sound came out. The mouse gnawed at my toe, drawing a single bead of purplish-black blood. I couldn't feel it anymore. That was nice. Finally, no more pain. I whispered to the pathetic shell below me. Don't be scared. You can't feel a thing anymore. It'll all be over soon. The next morning, the winter sun streamed through my window, but it brought no warmth to my corpse. The clatter of pots and pans echoed from the kitchen. Mom was making breakfast. The smell of frying eggs wafted under my door. Normally, it was the most tantalizing smell in the world. But I was only allowed to eat boiled vegetables, because Mom said liars didn't deserve to eat meat. Today, she was deliberately banging the spatula against the pan. I knew she was trying to tempt me. She wanted the smell to drive me crazy, to make me crawl out of my room and beg for forgiveness. The old me might have done it. For a single fried egg, I would have confessed to crimes I never committed. But now, I didn't need to eat anymore. Audrey still hasn't come out? Dad asked, reading the newspaper at the dining table. Nope. Stubborn as a mule. Mom said, slamming a plate down on the table. She's spoiled rotten. If she wants to eat, she'll eat. If not, she can starve. Mina, sipping her milk, let her eyes dart around. She deliberately ran to my bedroom door and took a loud, exaggerated sniff. Then she shrieked, Mommy, Audrey's room stinks. Did she go to the bathroom in there? I floated by the door watching my sister with a bitter ache. The heat was on so high. In just one night, I had started to smell. Mom was going to hate me even more now. Mom marched over, her brow furrowed in disgust. Audrey, she yelled, pounding on the door. Are you a pig? The bathroom is right next door. Are your legs broken? You actually soiled your own room. You are hopeless. You'd rather live in your own filth than admit you were wrong. I remembered when I was little. I had a bad stomach flu once, and didn't make it to the toilet in time. Not only did Mom not help me clean up, she made me stand in the yard as a punishment for everyone to see. She pointed at me and told the neighbors, look at this one. Dirty as a little pig. And now, she thought I was dirty again. Forget her. Mom waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing a fly. Let her stew in her own stink. See how she likes it. Dad put down his paper, his frown deepening. The smell is getting pretty bad. I'll go check. Maybe a mouse died in there or something. He stood up and started walking toward my room. My spirit heart leaped. Dad, open the door. Please look at me. I'm right behind the door. Just turn the handle. And you'll see that I'm not moving. You'll see my face has already started to turn black. I floated right in front of him, waving my arms frantically, trying to get his attention. His hand closed around the doorknob. Ring, ring, ring. The shrill ring of his phone cut through the tension. It was his boss. Dad answered, and his face paled. What? The main server crashed? Okay, I'm on my way. He hung up and grabbed his coat in a panic. Honey, it's an emergency at work. I have to go now. I might not be back for a few days. Wait, what about Audrey? Mom started to say, but he was already out the door. I was stunned. So close. Just 1 second. If that call had come 1 second later, I would have been found. Maybe then my body wouldn't have to keep rotting here. That afternoon, Mom took Mina shopping. My corpse was left alone in the house. They returned that evening, their arms full of shopping bags filled with expensive seafood and gifts. The moment they walked in, the smell hit them like a physical blow. Mom gagged, covering her nose. Audrey, are you trying to turn this house into a garbage dump? She wouldn't even open the door to yell at me, as if a single glance into my room would contaminate her. She found a roll of heavy-duty duct tape, knelt down and viciously sealed the crack at the bottom of my door. If you love the stench so much, you can suffocate in it. Just don't let it bother the rest of us. After applying the last strip, Mom stood and dusted off her hands, satisfied. There. Peace and quiet. She went to the kitchen to steam the lobster. I looked at the sealed door, and the last flicker of hope in my soul was extinguished along with the flow of air. I finally understood. In my mother's heart, my life or death was less important than a seafood dinner. She would rather seal me away than open the door to see if I was dead inside. You win, Mom. I'll never bother you again. On the morning of the third day, the warm winter sun filled the living room, but it couldn't chase away the gloom that had settled over our home. The central heating was cranked up to a sweltering 26 degrees. The duct tape was no longer enough. A cloying, greasy stench of decay now permeated the entire house. Mom was arranging a bouquet of fresh flowers, but no matter how strong their perfume, the smell of my rotting body overpowered it. Snip. She violently decapitated a rose, a thorn pricking her finger. She had reached her limit. In her mind, I wasn't bathing. I was using my room as a toilet, maybe even hiding dead rats in there, all to disgust her, to defy her authority. Audrey, you've really crossed the line this time. Mom stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a rolling pin, and marched toward my room, her face a mask of fury. I'm going to beat the filth out of you today. It's clear the shocks aren't working anymore. You need to learn a lesson you can feel on your skin. I floated in front of her, looking at her contorted face, waving my hands frantically to stop her. Don't go in. Mom, please don't. I'm hideous. I've started to rot. You'll be scared. Even though she didn't love me, I didn't want her to see me in such a horrific state. But she passed right through my soul and ripped the tape from the doorframe. Screech. The sound of the tearing tape was deafening. She jammed the spare key into the lock and twisted. Bang! The door flew open with violent force. A thick, almost tangible wave of putrefaction rolled out, as if from Pandora's box. Mom staggered back, bending over and dry heaving. Ugh, Audrey, what in God's name have you done? She looked up and saw me, still in the same position I'd been in 3 days ago, slumped over my desk, my back to her, perfectly still. To her, this was an act of silent defiance. The ultimate arrogance. Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. Are you still playing dead? Blinded by rage, she charged forward, raising the rolling pin high above her head. But she didn't strike immediately. She wanted to haul me up first, to see the look on my stubborn face. Get up. Her hand shot out and grabbed the collar of my pajamas, her fingers closing around the back of my neck. And then she froze. The moment her skin made contact with mine, time seemed to stop. Through the thin fabric of my pajamas, her fingers didn't feel the warmth of living skin, or the softness of flesh. What she felt was a piece of meat as cold and hard as a block of ice. It was a deathly cold, a cold that seeped into her bones. A cold utterly devoid of life. Mom faltered for a second, but her momentum carried her forward. She yanked with all her might, and my body was pulled backward. The chair tipped over with me. Crash. The chair slammed onto the floor with a deafening bang. My body, stiff as a statue, fell with it. And my face at last was revealed. The crash of the chair was the loudest sound the house had ever known. It wasn't just wood hitting the floor. It was the sound of a facade shattering. My body lay sprawled on the hardwood, stiff and unnatural. Gravity had not been kind. Because I had died face down, the blood had pooled in my face and chest. A phenomenon the doctors call livor mortis. My skin was not pale. It was a mottled, bruised purple, tight against the bone. My eyes were open, staring blindly at the ceiling, cloudy and sunken. A darker fluid leaked from the corner of my mouth, staining the rug. And the smell. Now that the pocket of air between my body and the desk was broken, the scent rose up in a suffocating wave. It was sweet, cloying, and primal. It was the smell of biology breaking down. Mom didn't scream. Not yet. She stood frozen, her hand still raised in the air, gripping nothing. The rolling pin clattered from her other hand, rolling across the floorboards until it hit my cold, unmoving foot. Audrey, she whispered. It was a small, confused sound. It was the sound of a woman whose entire worldview, a world built on rules, control, and binary lights, had just collided with the chaotic, undeniable reality of death. Get up, she said, but her voice wavered. Stop doing this. She took a step back, wiping the hand that had touched my neck against her pants, over and over again. She scrubbed frantically, as if she could wipe away the sensation of that impossible cold. Mina, she suddenly shrieked, her voice cracking. Mina, go to your room. But Mina was already there. She stood in the doorway, holding a half-eaten chocolate bar. She looked at the overturned chair. She looked at the purple, swollen face of her twin sister. Mina didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She took a bite of chocolate, chewed slowly, and wrinkled her nose. Ew, Mina said. She looks like a monster. Is she finally dead? That was the moment Mom broke. A guttural, animalistic wail ripped from her throat. She fell to her knees, not beside me but away from me. She was a doctor. She knew. She knew what rigor mortis felt like. She knew what decomposition smelled like. She knew that no amount of correction or electric shocks could fix this. I floated near the ceiling, looking down at the tableau. I'm sorry I look so scary, Mom, I thought. I tried to hide it. I tried to keep the door closed. The bracelet on my wrist, my dead wrist, was silent now. The battery must have finally died after 3 days of relentless flashing. It was just a piece of plastic now. But on my wrist, beneath the strap, the skin was burned raw, a ring of blistered red flesh where the machine had shocked me, over and over, while I lay dying. Mom crawled toward me then. She reached out, shaking violently, and touched my cheek. Ice. Hard, unyielding ice. No, she gasped. No, the light. The light was red. The light was red yesterday. You were lying. You were faking it. The machine said you were faking it. She looked around the room, wild-eyed, searching for the logic, for the science. The machine doesn't lie, she screamed at my corpse. Wake up. Admit you're doing this to hurt me. But the dead do not apologize. The next few hours were a blur of blue lights and static. The police arrived first, followed by the paramedics. I watched them work. They didn't rush. Paramedics rush when there is a life to save. When they saw me, they slowed down. They moved with a somber, heavy respect. Time of death? An officer asked, holding a notepad. He had a handkerchief pressed over his nose. The coroner, a weary woman with kind eyes, knelt beside me. She gently lifted my arm. It was stiff. Hard to say without the internal exam, she said softly. But given the rigor and the decomposition, at least 48 hours. Maybe 72. 3 days, the officer asked, his voice rising in disbelief. She's been dead in here for 3 days? Mom was sitting on the living room sofa, wrapped in a shock blanket. A female officer stood over her. Ma'am, the officer asked. When was the last time you saw your daughter alive? Mom stared at the wall. New Year's Eve. She said her stomach hurt. And you didn't seek medical attention? The bracelet. Mom whispered. Her eyes were glassy. The bracelet was red. It means she's lying. It measures the truth. She lies all the time. She's a pathological liar. The coroner walked out of my bedroom. She was holding the bracelet she had cut off my wrist. She held it with a pair of tweezers, dangling it like a poisonous snake. Officer, the coroner said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. You need to see this. The skin underneath, it's 3rd-degree burns. This device continued to administer electric shocks after the heart stopped. The room went silent. What? The officer asked. The subject likely died in extreme pain, the coroner continued, looking directly at Mom. And as the body went into spasms, or perhaps as the body cooled and the resistance changed, this machine kept shocking her. For days. Mom covered her ears. It was red. It was red. The front door burst open. It was Dad. He was still wearing his coat, his face flushed from the cold. He looked at the police cars outside, the ambulance, the open door. Audrey, he called out, panic rising in his chest. Helen, what's going on? He ran into the living room and saw Mom shaking on the couch. Then he saw the black body bag being wheeled out of my bedroom on a gurney. He froze. I drifted toward him. Daddy, I whispered. I'm sorry you have to see this. He walked toward the gurney. The paramedics tried to stop him, but he shoved them aside with a strength I didn't know he had. He unzipped the bag. He saw my face. Dad didn't scream. He didn't cry. He simply collapsed. His legs gave out, and he hit the floor with a thud, his hand clutching the side of the bag. He made a sound, a low broken wheeze, like a man who had just been punched in the soul. My baby, he sobbed. My little girl. Mina sat in the corner armchair, swinging her legs. The police had given her a juice box. She watched Dad crying with a look of mild curiosity, as if she were watching a boring TV show. Daddy, don't cry, Mina said. Audrey was bad. She smelled gross. Dad slowly turned his head to look at Mina. For the first time in his life, there was no love in his eyes when he looked at his golden child. There was only horror. The autopsy results came back 2 days later. I was there when the detective laid the file on the kitchen table. The house was quiet. The smell was gone, scrubbed away by professional cleaners, but the memory of it lingered in the peeling wallpaper. Mom and Dad sat at opposite ends of the table. They hadn't spoken in 48 hours. Acute appendicitis, the detective said. He was a large man with tired eyes. He didn't look at Mom. He looked at his hands. It ruptured on New Year's Eve. Sepsis set in quickly. It would have been excruciating. He paused, flipping a page. We also found traces of paper in her stomach. Dad looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. Paper. She was eating paper, the detective said. And the wood from pencils. We believe she was trying to quell the hunger pangs. Her stomach was otherwise empty. Mom made a small, choking sound. But the snacks. The money she stole. We found the money, the detective said flatly. It was in Mina's room, hidden inside her dollhouse, along with wrappers for the junk food. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the house. Mom shook her head. No, that's impossible. Mina's bracelet, it's always green. Mina doesn't lie. The detective reached into his pocket and pulled out an evidence bag. Inside were the 2 bracelets, my red one and Mina's green one. We had these analyzed by a tech specialist, the detective said. Do you know how these things actually work, Dr. Sterling? You're a doctor. You should know. Mom didn't answer. They aren't lie detectors, the detective said. Lie detectors, polygraphs, don't even work half the time. These are toys. They measure galvanic skin response, sweat, pulse rate, physiological arousal. He tossed the bag onto the table. When a person lies, they usually get nervous. Their heart beats faster. They sweat. The bracelet turns red. He pointed to my bracelet. Audrey was in pain. Her appendix was bursting. Her body was in a state of catastrophic stress. Her heart was racing. She was sweating from fever. Of course the bracelet was red. It was screaming that she was in physical distress. He turned to Mina's bracelet. And Mina? Dad whispered, his voice trembling. Sociopathy, the detective said bluntly. Or extreme psychopathy. We see it sometimes. Some people can lie to your face, steal, even hurt others, and their pulse never jumps. They don't feel guilt. They don't feel fear. They don't sweat. The bracelet stayed green, the detective said, looking at Mom with utter disgust. Because your other daughter is physically incapable of feeling remorse. Mom stared at the plastic bands. The science she had worshipped. The objective truth she had clung to. It was all a lie. I wasn't a liar. I was just in pain. Mina wasn't honest. She was just cold. I killed her, Mom whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. The funeral was small. It snowed that day. I liked the snow. It covered everything in white, making the world look clean again. I stood by my own grave, watching the casket go down. It was a pretty casket, white with silver handles. Much nicer than the bed I had slept in. Dad cried the whole time. He held my notebook against his chest, the one he had found on my desk. The one where I wrote, I really do love you. He hadn't let go of it since he found it. Mom stood there, but she wasn't really there. She was wearing black. She looked thin, frail. Her eyes were fixed on the dirt. She kept rubbing her right wrist over and over, as if she were trying to remove a phantom bracelet. Mina didn't come. She was with a child psychologist. The state had stepped in. They were evaluating her. Dad had told the social workers everything. About the shocks. About the neglect. About the honesty bracelets. After the service, Dad walked to the car. Mom stayed behind. Helen, Dad said. His voice was cold. We need to go. The lawyers are waiting. Leave me, Mom said. Dad hesitated, then nodded. He got in the car and drove away. He didn't look back. I knew he would never forgive her. I knew he would never forgive himself. Mom stood alone in the graveyard. Audrey, she whispered to the fresh dirt. I walked over to her. I stood right in front of her. I'm here, Mom, I said. I'm not in pain anymore. You don't have to be sad. She fell to her knees in the snow. She dug her fingers into the freezing earth, clawing at the dirt as if she could dig me back up. I'm sorry, she screamed. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I trusted the machine. She pulled something out of her pocket. It was my bracelet. She had stolen it back from the house before the police took everything. She fumbled with the clasp and strapped it onto her own wrist. Punish me, she sobbed. It should have been me. She looked at the sky. I killed my daughter. I am a terrible mother. I deserve to die. She waited for the shock. She waited for the red light. But the bracelet stayed green. She stared at it, horrified. No, she gasped. No. I'm lying. I'm a monster. Turn red. Damn you, turn red, she screamed. I hate her. I hated Audrey. The bracelet stayed green. I loved her. I loved her more than anything. Green. I'm innocent. Green. She slammed her wrist against the tombstone. Smash. 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 Why won't you work? Because she was broken. Her mind had snapped. She felt everything and nothing at the same time. The machine couldn't read chaos. It couldn't read a soul that had already hollowed itself out. I reached out and placed my ghostly hand on her shoulder. It doesn't matter anymore, Mom. The machine never mattered. But she couldn't feel me. 3 months later, the house was sold. Dad moved to a small apartment in the city. He took my ashes with him. He put them in a beautiful urn on his mantle, right next to a framed photo of me. One of the few where I was smiling. He divorced Mom. It was quick. Mina was in a residential facility for youth with severe behavioral disorders. I visited her once. She was charming the nurses, stealing their pens, smiling that perfect, innocent smile. But every night, when the lights went out, she stared at the ceiling, looking bored. She didn't miss me. She didn't miss Mom. She was just waiting for her next game. And Mom? Mom was in a place with white walls and soft floors. I spent most of my time there. She sat in a chair by the window, staring at the sun. She didn't speak to the doctors. She didn't eat unless they made her. She wore a bracelet made of paper. She had made it herself, twisting a strip of napkin around her wrist. She would sit there for hours, whispering to herself. I'm hungry, she would whisper. Then she would violently twitch, her body jerking as if shocked by an invisible current. Ow, she would say, her voice flat. Red light. I'm lying. I'm not hungry. I'm cold. Twitch. Ow. Red light. Lying again. She had become her own machine. She was shocking herself with her own guilt, trapped in a loop of her own creation. I sat on the windowsill, swinging my legs. I looked young again. The purple bruises were gone. I looked like the 10-year-old girl I was supposed to be. I watched her torment herself. I watched her wither away, consumed by the logic she had used to destroy me. I wanted to hate her. I really tried. But as I watched her flinch from a pain that wasn't there, tears streaming down her face, I realized that she was suffering more than I ever did. My pain had ended when my heart stopped. Hers was just beginning. Mom, I whispered. She stopped rocking. She turned her head slowly, looking right at the empty space where I sat. For a second, her eyes cleared. Audrey, she breathed. I hopped down from the window. I walked over to her and wrapped my arms around her neck. I pressed my cheek against hers. I couldn't hug her when I was alive. She wouldn't let me. I couldn't hug her when I died. I was too cold. But now, in this place between worlds, I held her. It's okay, Mom, I whispered into her ear. You can stop now. The light is off. She closed her eyes. A single, long breath escaped her lips. Her shoulders slumped. I love you, she whispered. And for the first time in 10 years, I knew she wasn't lying. But I also knew it was too late. I kissed her forehead, a soft, ghostly touch. Goodbye, Mom. I pulled away. The room began to fade. The white walls dissolved into a warm, golden light. The pain, the hunger, the cold. It was all gone. I turned my back on the woman in the chair. I walked toward the light. I didn't need a bracelet to tell me the truth anymore. I knew who I was. I was Audrey. And I was finally free.